All right, men, welcome to today's episode of Strong Men, Strong Marriages. Who's your role model? So, look, all of us are following someone in our roles as husbands, as fathers, as, what we do for work. So, if we're not conscious of who our role model is, we will unconsciously follow mostly like our parents, or it might react against them. Either way is not that great. So, what we want to do is just be conscious of who our role model is. So, we're going to talk about today, how to choose, why it matters. So, my name is Mike Fraser, MD. I'm a psychiatrist and marriage coach. I help high achieving Christian men have more intimate marriages. So, some wins from guys in our program this week. Guys are having more deep, intimate conversations. Really cool to see them share this and just feel like they're connecting with their wives in a better way. Guys are sitting together, holding hands, enjoying moments together. Super awesome. Wives are interested in what their husbands are doing in the program, showing interest. Hey, like, what are you learning? What's going on? Really cool. Guys are managing their emotions well in stressful situations, and wives are noticing the difference where before a husband would have shut down or exploded, now they're handling it in a calm, caring way, loving way, strong and loving way. Super cool. So for me, yeah, this like really reflecting on this role model and like choosing a new role model for myself has made just a humongous difference. That's why I wanted to share it with you today as something that could be really helpful. So the thing is, what you're doing right now, if you're not consciously trying to change it, is you're going to repeat the patterns that you saw growing up. It's just what we do. Okay. It's natural, right? We saw the way we were raised, we saw the way our dad acted, our mom acted. We're going to integrate some of those things. We're going to carry them into our marriage. We're going to carry them into our pattern with our kids. Normal. Okay. So maybe what you're doing is you're being overly strict with your kids and then shifting to being overly indulgent. Okay, maybe you saw that growing up, or maybe you saw overly strict, so you do it, and then you're like, oh, that wasn't that great, and so then you're overly indulgent, you don't follow through. So, I've done this with my kids for sure. Like, hey, you got to get this done, and then all of a sudden, like, oh, like, it's okay, everybody, with your wife, right? You're alternating between, oh, hey, I'll do whatever you want, I love you, I'm here for you, right? And then shifting to, hey, I'm sick of doing so much for you. It's your turn to do something for me. So we call that the mosquito cycle. You're doing nice things for your wife, but really subconsciously or maybe consciously you're expecting something back: attention, appreciation, affection, and sex. When you don't get it, you start getting frustrated. Then you explode like this, get mad, or oh, I'm doing so much, I'm sick of this. Or you escape into pornography or other things, and then you go back to feeling bad, and then you're back to doing nice things for her. It's just a cycle that goes on over and over. Maybe you saw that growing up. A lot of that has to do with like your own internal sense of attachment. Whether you felt like people would meet your needs, whether you felt like you had to earn other people's respect and love. So a lot of that mosquito cycle comes from that. Oh, I need to feel valuable from my wife, right? I need her to tell me I'm good enough. And so you do these nice things hoping to earn her love. When she doesn't seem to give it the way you want, now you feel bad. So yeah, kind of like I shared last week in the podcast. I know that was my thing. It's like, oh, I have to be perfect to be loved. Not so, right? But when I think that way, I see things that way, and then I get mad at my wife because, I hear her saying you need to be perfect even though she's not saying it. All of that. So yeah, your past really colors the way your relationships go. It's kind of the bottom line. If you're not conscious and trying to shift things, okay? Maybe you're feeling like your wife and your kids owe you their love, respect, and emotional support, right? Especially if maybe growing up you felt like it was your job to take care of your parents' emotions, right? So I kind of felt that way, and then I've kind of put that on my kids, which is definitely a pattern that I want to break, right? But maybe you're doing the same thing where you are subconsciously, yeah, you grew up and you kind of had to walk on eggshells or kind of like be the person to take care of your parents' emotions, or maybe your dad was really mad, you had to walk on eggshells around that. So now you're kind of like, oh, finally, like now it's somebody's turn to take care of me, like I had to take care of my parents. That's a very subconscious thing that can happen, but causes lots of problems and repeats the cycle into future generations. Okay, so why this doesn't work, look, like as humans we're going to mimic what we see. It's normal, it's natural, right? It gets encoded in very deep levels. Like even if you look at epigenetics, like there's evidence that like past traumas carry through in our DNA actually. So Like if we're not aware of it, will 100% repeat the patterns that we saw at home. It's just that's what's going to happen. Okay. Or maybe we get a little bit of insight and we try to do the exact opposite, which can also cause problems. Like if you grew up in a home that's way too strict, maybe you go the exact opposite way where you're way too lenient. There's like no boundaries in place at all. Or your house was too lenient, you go way too strict. Everything is, everybody's got to be perfect all the time, right? So the problem in all of this, right, is that we don't really have a clear role model to follow. If we didn't see it at home, and maybe we didn't really spend time with other friends, parents who were more like secure in the way they dealt with things, we just didn't see it, right? And so it's like, man, like who do we follow? How do we do this, right? Because we actually need a good role model to follow. Okay, so like as I'm going through my own therapy, I've come in with different goals, but right now my goal is just become a more secure person. Truth is, I don't know really how that looks, right? I haven't seen it modeled particularly well. And so, the initial goal when I left therapy this week was, well, just work on loving kindness, like being loving and kind to yourself and to other people. And so I was like, okay. And so I went into my car and I was like going through ChatGPT and like, okay, like, hey, identify some people who showed a lot of loving kindness. Pretty much all women. And I was like, okay, well, try again. Try to demonstrate like men who showed loving kindness. And then it came up with like Mr. Rogers or like, like, yeah, Jesus was there. But what I realized as I went through it, I was like, man, what I'm looking for, and I was like, okay, now find like some people from like movies or things like that, or came with like Gandhi or Martin Luther King Jr., which like for sure, like those are guys I respect. Stood up. Atticus Finch was another one, like willing to. So when I started to see like who do I really like admire, it's guys that are willing to fight, right? But what I saw even more for myself was, and again, I think could be just totally personal to me, like for what I need right now. And I feel like God's definitely guiding this. Is just like, okay, the guys I respected were, they were kind and they were dangerous. They were dangerous, right? Physically dangerous. So like Jack Bauer, okay, or Mufasa from The Lion King. Like the line he says, like, he goes and he takes care of the hyenas, right? And he's like, when he's talking to Simba a few days later, he's like, no one messes with your dad. Right? That's what he says to him. And yeah, he was tough. He knew how to fight, right? He knew how to physically take care of himself. Like Rick Grimes from Walking Dead. So a guy who, stood for what was right, even when it was hard, right? Jack Bauer, kind of same thing, and had that physical thing. But the guy that I landed on is like really a great role model for me was Maximus from Gladiator. So he was the guy, right? That was like, okay, like I can get behind that. This makes a lot of sense to me. So Jesus, it didn't quite work for me. And I think a lot of that's just because the way I've seen him portrayed. I think also, we don't see Jesus as a husband or father. And so it's a little bit tricky. Like in the Bible, he wasn't a husband or father, and so how do we implement that? It's funny. I mean, Maximus, we don't exactly say that way, but we do. At the same time, we do, right? So yeah. Anyway, like I needed a different role model for me personally, for where I'm at in my journey right now. I needed a different one. So yeah, it was Maximus, and the commonality in the guys that I saw was like they're fighters, right? They're fighters, and so for whatever reason, like it just clicked for me. Like it worked so well this past week or so. So like I shifted my workouts. So now I'm just like, okay, how do I maximize my striking power? How do I hit harder? How do I kick harder? So I'm lifting weights, but I also, my wife got me a punching bag for Christmas. I didn't really use it that much, but now I am, right? I'm hitting it, I'm punching it. I'm going to get something like measures how hard I'm hitting and kicking it. I reached out to my friend that he's like on his way to becoming a UFC fighter. Asked him like where to train, so I'm gonna go train at his place. We'd probably hire someone to do some weapons training with me. Just like physically, I've done some of that stuff, but not to where I could feel comfortable. I don't have the reps, right? I don't have the reps in to like feel comfortable in a physical fight, right? So And that's cool, right? Like feeling that shift. But more importantly, right, is kind of like identifying that fighter spirit. It's just like that confidence, that like solid, like if you watch Gladiator and you see Maximus, he's not cocky. He's not like, he's a humble guy, right? And super tough, like super strong. You don't want to mess with this guy. Um, but for the most part, he's kind, right? Except when he needs to be dangerous, right? So I don't know, man. For some reason, it's really connected with me. So like with the kids, I've been able to just be strong and loving in discussions. I'm always talking about that balance, right? But I think Maximus does such a good job of demonstrating that. So, for example, I talked to my son the other night about, just some jobs he hadn't been doing around the house, and just felt like I handled it really well. Just like, hey, you've been stepping out of other places. I need you to step up here in the house too. Um, he responded kind of like a teenager might respond, but I didn't freak out about his response either, right? What my therapist told me was a secure person acts the same no matter how the other people are acting. And I felt like I was able to embody that um, with him. And then it wasn't like, well, now I'm like holding out and I'm not gonna like you until you do your jobs. Like right after that, I invited him to like come watch a show with us. He didn't, but again, like that's fine. But then the next day we had a really good conversation. And I think a lot of it was because I was able to just stand strong in who I wanted to be, right? Um, with Elizabeth, and what much more just loving, caring, kind of thinking like how would Maximus treat his wife? And I think part of that's because of like that old time when it's set, like it was much more chivalry, right? And so, just like being there to serve my wife and taking that attitude and be her protector. Like we went out last night, I made sure I was on the side of the street when we were walking, that kind of thing. Like I can tell she's feeling a difference. Like she's been much more closer physically because of that. I also don't feel like I have to have sex with her, right? Where it's been like that before. And like people can pick this stuff up. Like when you feel different, people can pick it up. I've also been able to just be direct and more honest with her instead of like hanging on to stuff or kind of like mincing my words. I'm like, okay, like Maximus wouldn't do that, right? He would just be clear, not in a rude way, but he'd be clear, right? And so I've been able to do that more with her, which has been great. The other thing I've been doing, so Elizabeth, she had asked, we have chickens at the house, and she had asked like to, kind of be more helpful with that. And I was like, you know what? Like Maximus, someone in that time period, they would take good care of their animals and kind of connect with their animals. So like, I've just been taking better care of the chickens, researching things, taking them out, playing them some music, singing them songs, like just taking good care of them. And it was funny, like today I let the chickens out, and one of them just came and like jumped on my shoulder and just like sat with me. So just cool stuff. Like I'm just feeling these good shifts inside myself because of that. So why all this works, right, is just having a persona. It just makes it easier to make your decisions. Okay. So maybe for you that is Jesus. Maybe that really connects with you. Like, okay, what would Jesus do in this situation? For me lately, it's like, what would Maximus do, right? But it's more than that, right? It's like it's just that identity. Who is Jesus? Who is Maximus? Right? Who are these guys? How can I embody those principles? And even as I'm doing this, I'm kind of seeing, okay, like one thing that's different between me, like personality wise, and Maximus from that is like I like to joke, I like to have fun, probably more than Maximus does in that movie. And that's fine, right? That's just my personality, but kind of like that core persona of like confidence and caring and loving and being strong and direct, like that doesn't shift. And like taking care of my wife and my kids and my animals, right? That doesn't shift. I probably am more joking than Maximus in the movie, and that's cool. But yeah, like this is just it's working for me right now, taking on that persona of like a fighter, a warrior, right? Like even like warrior doesn't quite connect with me, like fighter connects better for me for whatever reason. So, and then my buddy, I was telling my friend about this, and he was like, "Yeah, like I like Maximus. I feel like he really embodies like what Stoicism is about." And I was like, "Yeah, I heard of that, but I don't really know what it's about." So I looked it up. A lot of cool things about it, like living with nature and in harmony with nature, and practicing self-denial, like but kind of the tenets are wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, which is really just kind of like living in balance, like not depriving yourself too much, but not going overboard with like pleasures or things like that. And like wealth and things there, neutral, it's just what you do with them that matters, which I definitely agree with. That's lots of cool things about that. But anyway, in summary for today, look, we're all following somebody in our roles as husbands, fathers, in our work, right, with our friends. We're all following someone either consciously or unconsciously. And if we're not conscious, we're doing it unconsciously. So like unconsciously, we're going to repeat our parents' patterns or do the exact opposite, right? Both of those cause problems. So instead, find a man who encompasses who you want to be and follow him, right? For me right now, right, that's Maximus, that's working for me. Or maybe it's a group of men. Okay, like in this way I want to be like Maximus, in this way I want to be like my dad, in this way I want to be like this other guy that I like, right? So, finding that, imagining that, picturing that, it just makes things way easier. Okay, so if you are on the path to becoming a better man, a better husband, a better father, just embodying more of who you want to be, come join us. Like that's what we're trying to do in Strong Men, Strong Marriages. So visit strongmen.io, join the email list. We have a group program that opens once a month. It'll open at the end of this month. It's just $200 a month to join. We're looking for 500 guys this year that are willing to spend $200 a month to create amazing marriages. So if that's you, if you're willing to put $200 a month into becoming a better husband and father, breaking generational patterns, setting up a good example for your boys and daughters to follow, come join us. Okay, at the end of the month, $200 a month. We also have an intensive program that's a significantly larger financial investment for guys that are in a stronger financial position and want a more intensive experience. You can fill out an application for that there. So visit strongmen.io and come join us. And we will see you there. Stay strong in God, men. We'll see you next episode.